Hello everyone, welcome back to another news and rumor video here to discuss. In today's video, we're looking at some signings from our past couple of days, some injury updates, a couple of small pieces of news, including some award finalists, plus a couple of trade rumors involving the Hawks, the Penguins, and the Predators. We'll touch on all this coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the End-to-End Hockey Channel. Once again, if you haven't already, leave a like, leave a comment, leave a subscribe, tell all your friends. The best hockey content on YouTube is right here at the End-to-End Hockey Channel. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. We're trying to hit 750 subscribers in the very near future. And don't forget to leave a comment. We'd love to hear your guys' opinion on all that we'll discuss here today. Stay tuned for some live videos coming out next week. We should have a couple of live videos on Monday and Tuesday involving the Game 4 of Colorado, Minnesota, and Game 4 of Montreal, Buffalo. So I hope you guys all tune in for those ones. Those are going to be some very interesting games over next week. And we should have a couple of later ones, but I don't know the game schedule as of yet. So I'll have to figure that out a little bit later into the week. And on top of that, don't forget to stay tuned for more videos coming in the very near future. But in today's video, we have another news and rumor video here to discuss. I do apologize if it's done a little bit off. I have the hiccups right now, so that's why it might be a lot of cuts in this video. But in today's video, we do have another news and rumor video here to discuss. So we got some very interesting things to talk about here. So first, we have 5 signings here to talk about. The first one in Utah, they signed 2025 fourth round pick Igor Borvik, who's a right winger, 20 years old, to a 3-year ELC with an AAV of $995,000. So not bad pickup here from the Utah Mammoth. He'd been playing over in the KHL, putting up 16 goals, 30 points in 59 games. So he had a really good season over in the KHL. I think eventually he could be a really solid third liner for the Utah Mammoth. So not a bad pickup there for the Utah Mammoth as they signed Borvik to a new contract. Then we saw the Washington Capitals sign 2 separate players, both Fenners, to new ELCs. The first one was Peter Sikora, who was a 2024 fifth-round pick of the Washington Capitals, who had been playing over in Czechia. He's 20 years old. He has a 3-year ELC with an AAV of $995,000. So really good pickup there from the Caps. I think Sikora eventually could be a decent bottom 6 forward. And then they also signed Theodor Niederbacher, who was actually a draft pick of the Detroit Red Wings. He's 24 years old, center prospect, sent a 1-year contract into Washington with an AAV of $1.025 million. It's not a bad pickup. He was a second-round pick in the 2020 draft of Detroit when playing over in the FHL, where he had 13 goals and 32 points in 52 games. So a really solid pickup there for the Caps as they do sign Niederbacher as well as Sikora to new contract extensions. So very interesting to note there. And then we saw the Pittsburgh Penguins sign 2 players as well. First, they signed Ilya Solovyov, who was actually acquired in season from the Colorado Avalanche, 25-year-old defenseman. I think he plays on the left side. He was in the final year of his 2-year deal with the AAV of league minimum. He's 25 years old. He gets a 1-year extension with the AAV of $850,000. So he was a serviceable 6'7" defenseman this year for the Pittsburgh Penguins. So once again, if he doesn't make the team, he can easily be buried in the minors. It's not a bad pickup here for the Penguins and add some solid defensive depth. He wound up putting up 1 goal and 8 points in 30 games with the Avalanche and Penguins combined. So once again, not an everyday NHL defenseman, but a decent depth guy. So solid pickup here for the Penguins. And they also signed 26-year-old forwards who can play center or left wing, Connor Dewar, who was in the final year of a 1-year, $1.1 million deal to a 2-year extension with an AAV of $2.25 million. So Dewar was actually a pretty decent bottom 6 forward this past year for Pittsburgh. So once again, that's not a bad contract. Dewar wound up putting up 14 goals and 30 points in 78 games for the Pittsburgh Penguins this year. So not a bad production from the Pittsburgh Penguins bottom 6 forward. So very interesting note there. But the Penguins have signed Dewar and Solovyov to extensions. The Caps have signed Niederbacher and Sikora to ELCs, and the Utah Mammoth have signed Borvik to an ELC. So very interesting to note there. Next, going over to a couple of injury updates. When it comes to some injury updates, we saw a couple of injuries from over the past couple of days. First, Sam Carrick, who's getting close to returning actually, after it seems like practicing really hard, didn't miss games 1 and 2 due to his left arm injury. That's kept him out for the past couple of weeks. I think it's actually probably closer to a month now. So not great news there, but it does seem like Sam Carrick is close to returning, but he wasn't able to get into game action for games 1 or 2 for Buffalo. Alex Nikishin, who missed the first 2 games of round 2 due to a concussion suffered in game 4 of the first round, returned to game action in game 3 for the Carolina Hurricanes. So it was a big boost there for Nikishin to get back into game action for Carolina. Josh Manson, who missed 3 straight games with upper body injury for the Colorado Avalanche, should get back into game action on Saturday. So that's a really big boost there for the Avs. So they should be able to get Josh Manson back into the lineup on Saturday. So it's a big boost. Mikko Rantanen apparently suffered a torn ACL during the Olympics, and that is why he missed a whole bunch of time leading up until the playoffs. And Rupe Hintz suffered a double hamstring tear, which is why he missed the entirety of the playoffs and the last little bit of the regular season. So those were some of the injuries that Stars players are dealing with towards the end of the season, and why Rantanen and Hintz missed a whole bunch of time. Ryan Pulock has underwent shoulder surgery and should be good to go for training camp, so that's really good news there for the Islanders. Pulock's a really big piece of the Islanders' top 4, so good to see he got that surgery taken care of, and hopefully he's going to be able to get ready to go for training camp. Noah Cates, who left Game 2 for the Philadelphia Flyers with a lower body injury, has been ruled out for the rest of the series. So it's not great news there, but now the Flyers facing elimination later tonight, it's looking like Case is probably going to have his season be done for. Meanwhile, Owen Tippett missed a 3rd straight game in Game 3 with undisclosed injury, and once again, that's a bad blow there. Tippett is not playing the second round yet. He's a big piece of the Philadelphia Flyers forward group, so seeing him continue to miss some games is not great news there for Philadelphia. Victor Hedman, who was dealing with mental issues this past year, as we've already mentioned on the channel, should be all right to play for next year, according to him, so there's a very likely chance that Hedman, after missing the last portion of this year for Tampa, will be good to go for the start of next season, so that'll be a big boost there for Tampa. And Nils Höglander has withdrawn from the World Championship due to an injury, so not great news there. Höglander missed a whole bunch of time this year due to injuries, so hopefully it's nothing too serious and he's able to go for training camp in a couple of months. So very interesting note there, but those are all the injury updates from our past couple of days. Next, going over to some recalls and some reassignments. When it comes to some recalls, Posh, Colorado 3rd stringer, was once again recalled by the Avalanche to provide some added goaltending depth. And Jet Luchenko was a recall from the OHL to join the Philadelphia Flyers with the big club. So once again, we'll see if Luchenko is able to get going and get into game action tonight for the Philadelphia Flyers, but that's not a bad pickup here for the Philadelphia Flyers as they recall Jet Luchenko. And then when it comes to some reassignments, Jack Khan was reassigned by Colorado with Manson nearing a return now, and then 4 separate players were signed from juniors or overseas to the AHL. Nabokov in Colorado was assigned from the KHL to the AHL. Zonin in Pittsburgh was reassigned from the QMJHL to the AHL. O'Brien in Seattle was assigned from the OHL to the AHL, and Carbonneau from the St. Louis Blues was reassigned from the QMJHL to the AHL. So a couple of teams signing some of their top-end prospects to the AHL. So very interesting to note there. But those are some very interesting reassignments with Nabokov, Zonin, O'Brien, and Carbonneau now all heading to the AHL. So very interesting note there. Next, going over to a couple of really quick signing updates before we get to the trade rumors. So when it comes to some signing updates, the cap has officially been set. The NHL came out and announced it. The upper cap limit for this upcoming season, for the offseason, will be $104 million. So not a bad pickup here for the NHL to bump the cap hit from 96 this past year to $104 million for next year. And the cap floor is going to be $76.9 million. So very interesting to note there. Those are the current numbers for the current salary cap. When it comes to some finalists for some awards, Cirelli, Suzuki, and Nelson were finalists for the Selke Award. Dali, Makar, Werenski were finalists for the Norris Award. And Kucherov, McDavid, and McCann were finalists for the Hart Award. So a very interesting note there. Once again, a little bit surprised Nelson was able to be a finalist in the Selke race. Suzuki and Cirelli I can see, but still very interesting note there. Those are the 3 finalists for the Selke. The 3 finalists for the Norris were Werenski, Makar, and Dahlin. Dahlin was not someone I was expecting to be a finalist for the Norris. I'm surprised the guys like Bouchard, Hughes, and Hudson were all left off the ballot, so very interesting to note there. But Dahlin, Makar, and Werenski are the Norris finalists. And when it comes to the Hart finalists, Kucherov and McDavid and McKinnon were the Hart finalists. I was really hoping Celebrini would be a Hart finalist, but he was unfortunately not. So Kucherov, McDavid, McKinnon are your Hart finalists. So very interesting to note there. Lassie Thompson, who signed back in Ottawa this past year and played with the Senators, actually gone to a couple of playoff games, has officially signed overseas again in the National League. So very interesting to note there. But Thompson's going to be heading back overseas after a small stint back with the Ottawa Senators. And then Jason Robertson extension has been made a priority by Stars GM Jim Nill. So once again, there's been a lot of talk about will the Stars sign Robertson? Will he wind up leaving? And it seems like Robertson being signed has been made a priority by Jim Nill. So very interesting to note there. But those were some of the interesting interesting news updates in the past couple of days. The cap's been set. Some more finalists were announced. Thompson signing overseas, and Robertson's been made a priority to be signed by Jim Nill and the Dallas Stars management. So very interesting note there. And lastly, we're going over to a couple of trade rumors. So a couple of trade rumors here to talk about. We're going to start off here with the Seattle Kraken and the New Jersey Devils. This was a report I came across. I don't think any sort of major insiders have been mentioning this, but it was something that I saw and came across, and that said that a player that the New Jersey Devils should be trying to target this offseason to improve their forward group and make it a little bit stronger for this upcoming season is Jared McCann from Seattle. Now, Seattle's best player since their expansion year has been Jared McCann. I think he leads a lot of the team's stats for their franchise. Like, McCann's been a fantastic fit, really blossomed in the Seattle Kraken organization, but he's going to be entering the final year of his deal this year. He's only got a $5 million cap hit. I think there's a possibility out there of Kraken sign him to like a 2 to 3 year extension to keep him in Seattle. But there has been some talk that the Kraken, if they want to go in the selling direction and try and really sort of tear this down a little bit further, they could try and look to move McCann the offseason. If he is open to being moved, I think going to New Jersey might be a really solid piece there. He's a guy who can put between 20 and 30 goals, around 50 to 60 points, playing in the middle six with guys like Heischer and Hughes and Bratt would be a smart move there for the Devils. Not sure if he gets center minutes, but he's also a versatile guy. He can also play on the wings. So I could see the Devils have some serious interest in McCann. That wouldn't be too surprising in my opinion. Now, what the Kraken would want from McCann, I think at least a second-round pick and a really good prospect, if not something a little bit higher than that. So I don't know exactly what. Maybe they try and pry a defenseman out of New Jersey, whether that's like a Nemec or a Dougie Hamilton. I'm not exactly sure, but I could definitely see the fit for New Jersey getting McCann, having him play on the left wing or maybe like the second line, trying to get some more goal scoring from that team. That wouldn't be a bad fit in my opinion. So I have to wait and see on that. Once again, I also don't think there's any guarantees that McCann gets dealt because McCann is still a really big piece of that Seattle Kraken team. If they do want to try and go for it again this upcoming season, I think they're going to have to try and keep McCann. But we're going to have to wait and see on that. So very interesting to note there. But keep your eye on Jared McCann. He could be a name we have to watch out for in the offseason. And keep your eye on the New Jersey Devils as a team who could potentially try and land him. Next, going over to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Once again, it's just an article I came across. I don't think any insiders were really mentioning this. And they said in this article that the Pittsburgh Penguins are probably going to be open for business. It's starting to sound more and more likely that Malkin will be brought back by the Pittsburgh Penguins. And they're going to try and turn over a new leaf after being first rounded, only winning 2 playoff games this year. I think Cal Dubas is intent to start trying to go and make this team younger. It seems like they want to try and add a couple of young pieces, maybe a starting level goaltender with Skinner most likely leaving via free agency. So the Penguins are going to be a team to keep your eye on this offseason. But a couple of names that were mentioned again that the Penguins could look to try and move this offseason would be Rickard Rakell and Brian Rust. Once again, both guys have 2 years left on their deals. Rust is making $5.1 million, Rakell $5 million. Both are very reasonable contracts for what they bring. If the Penguins are really going to try and start this retool of their own, and once again maybe try and be a little bit competitive again next year, but maybe try and start to turn over a new leaf, moving Rust and Rakell wouldn't be the worst move. They're both getting up there in age. If the Penguins aren't going to be a contender either next year or the year after, it might make sense to move on from both of them. Both are going to be able to return you guys really solid hauls. Like if they were to move Rust or Rakell, I could see him get like a first round pick plus maybe, or even like a second round pick, a solid prospect, maybe a roster player. So it'll be very interesting to note there. But Rust has been a staple for the Pittsburgh Penguins for the number of years. I think it was even part of those cup winning teams a couple of years back. I think it's like, 9-10 years ago now. And on top of that, Rakell was acquired, I think, about 6 or 7 years ago. And he's been a really solid piece in that top 6 for Pittsburgh. So we shall wait and see what happens there. But if the Penguins do wind up continuing to go on with their retool and look to try and move off some more of their veterans, as they have been mentioned they could do this upcoming offseason, I'd keep your eye on Rust and Rakell. Both guys are on reasonable deals, are still very productive. They are getting up there in age. And I think a lot of teams will have some major interest in adding those guys to their top 6. So very interesting note there. We'll have to keep our eye on Rust and Rakell entering this offseason. And lastly here, going over to the Chicago Blackhawks. When it comes to these Chicago Blackhawks, there's been some talk about the Blackhawks, according to David Pagnotta, having some serious interest in Matthew Knies. And apparently over the past year or two, they have made inquiries about Matthew Knies to the Toronto Maple Leafs. And now apparently it sounds like, according to Pagnotta, they're going to circle back and try again this offseason. Now apparently the Blackhawks are open to moving the 4th overall pick. And apparently Pagnotta has mentioned that that's the sort of player they'd be open to moving the fourth overall pick for. So that makes you wonder, could we see some sort of a fourth overall pick for Matthew Knies sort of package in this offseason? It's a possibility. If the Leafs are going to be committed to retooling and potentially move off Austin Matthews, potentially move off Matthew Knies, then getting high-level picks that can help them in the very near future might make a ton of sense for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So could they try and make some sort of move like that? That's possible. It might be some sort of like a short-term hurt, long-term gain, but Knies is very young. I think he's only like 24, 23, something like that. He's been a really good piece of their top six over the past couple of years. Just recently inked a long-term extension last offseason, so I don't think there's any guarantees or even a likelihood, potentiality of Knies getting moved. But I think if there was a possibility, having the fourth overall pick come back might be a very smart move there for the Leafs, as they will be able to get like a top-end player in McCann with first overall pick, and then maybe get one of the best defenders on the board with the fourth overall pick. So that's a very interesting possibility, and Knies playing with Connor Bedard would be a very interesting sight to see for the Chicago Blackhawks. I think it would be able to really turn up that offensive production on that team. So we'll have to wait and see on that. I definitely don't think Knies is any lock to be moved, but if the Leafs do want to going in the selling direction and move off guys like Matthews and Knies, I think Chicago would be a really good landing spot for Knies, and the fourth overall pick would be really good compensation for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So very interesting note there. But that's all we're talking for today. I'll let you guys thoughts. Could Knies get moved? Could the Hawks be a landing spot? Do you think the Penguins are going to move Rustin Raquel this offseason? And do you think McCann could head over to the New Jersey Devils? I'll let you guys thoughts on all of that, plus all the news updates, signings, injuries, and all the other stuff we talked about here down in the comment section below. That's all I'm going to talk for today. Remember to like this video, and if you like it, remember to subscribe down below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do it without all of you guys, so if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to comment. We're trying to hit 750 subscribers in the very near future, and 90% of you guys who are new to my videos are not subscribed. Stay tuned for my live streams next week on Monday and Tuesday for Colorado, Minnesota, and Montreal, Buffalo Game 4. So if you guys all tune in for those games, I also do a blog, to news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that, so you can check that out. I've linked to that in the description below, and can't see you guys all for next video. God bless you all. I'll see you all in the next one.